Individual teams don't have to argue and think about that. We made that at the solution level with a team that's been trained and understands how to do that properly. And then they constrain the possibility space for the people underneath them. That's how you get this thing to work. But too often, what we see, and this is where people who implement SAFe fall on their faces, typically, is because there's a whole bunch at that top to do exactly what Steve just said. The whole, how do you choose the portfolio? How do you manage? How do you make sure that we're not overburdening our resources? And instead, what they do is they just create a whole bunch of work and then just start shoving it down the pipeline to individual teams without constraining any kind of possibility space. And then say, teams, you have a planning meeting, figure it out. And they just thrash.
Make it so, number one.
Make it so. Right. So they're not making decisions.
To be fair, Earl, people have implemented it and it works and people are using it. And the fact that it is probably the most often used scaling framework out there means that people have found ways to make it work.
Some have. But I'm thinking those people have figured out how to do the packaging part, because that's what SAFe is really, really aiming at more than anything else. When you get down to the bottom for the Agile part, they kind of punt, right? You use whatever Agile works for you.
And to be fair, the places where we have worked with organizations who've gone down the SAFe path, at the lowest level of implementation, you're still back to doing Scrum. And
usually something like that, yeah.
There's pressures on teams to circumvent what classic or what good elements of a Scrum implementation are. So I think some of the dissolving of capability and performance is not necessarily from the framework, but from walking away from implementation of basic Scrum practices or good Scrum practices at the bottom level, which again is back to your when you get down to that level, you're at some point having to rely on the fact that should be stable. And sometimes it gets a little bit out of whack.
Well, some might counter that things like Scrum might be necessary, but not sufficient.
Yeah, because if I feed Scrum, one of the problems here, of course, is seeing what you're talking about is that the Scrum team gets a partial work. I was just talking to another company, and they realized that their Scrum team cannot build any consumer value, right? They need some other team to do some stuff before consumer value happens. So they can build away and they can have, but they have no idea whether it really works or not until the other team does something and then they actually make it something useful that consumers can use. And so when they're fed like that, it's really easy to get off track because you can start saying, look how great we're doing, but produce nothing that you can actually get nothing of value that can get the ROI back in. And I was going to mention another value, though, sometimes is just lowering.